Hello everyone. Once again, welcome back to the course of Object-Oriented Analysis and Design. This video is brought to you by Newton's Group of Institutions in association with Redefined Solutions. So this is Arvind Egireddy from the Department of Computer Science and Engineering. In this video, we will discuss about behavioral modeling in UML, processes and threads. So in this video, we will cover topics process and threads, flow of control, classes and events, communication, synchronization, and common modeling techniques. Coming to process and threads, we know that events happen and things takes place all at the same time. Therefore, when we model a system of the real world, we must take into account its process view, which encompasses the threads and processes that form the system's concurrency and synchronization mechanism. So in the UML, we model each independent flow of control as an activity object that represents a process or thread that can initiate the control activity. So we can say a process is a heavyweight flow that can execute concurrently with other processes, and a thread is a lightweight flow that can execute concurrently with other threads within the same process. So building abstractions so that they work safely in the presence of multiple flow of controls, which is hard. So in particular, we have to consider the approaches to communicate and synchronization that are more complex than for sequential systems. So here we also have to be careful to neither over-engineer our process view, that is too many concurrent flows and our system ends up crashing, nor we need to under-engineer it, that is insufficient concurrency, which does not optimize the system's throughput. So here, if you can see the active classes in the figure, so an active object is an object that throws a process or a thread and can initially control the activity. And an active class is a class whose instances are active objects. So here a process is a heavyweight flow that can execute concurrently with other processes. And a thread is a lightweight flow that can execute concurrently with other threads within the same process. And graphically, an active class is rendered as a rectangle with double lines for left and right sides. And here the processes and threads are rendered as a stereotyped active classes and also appear as sequence of interaction diagrams. Now coming to flow of control, in a purely sequential system, there is only one flow of control. This means that one thing and one thing only can take place at a time. So when a sequential program starts control, it's routed at the beginning of the program and the operations are dispatched one after the other. So even if there are concurrent things happening among the actors outside the system, a sequential program will process only one event at a time, queuing or discarding any concurrent external events. This is why we call it as an flow of control. So if we trace the execution of a sequential program, we will see that the locus of the execution flow from one statement to another in an sequential order. So we might see actions that branch, loop and jump about. And if there is any recursion in our iteration, we see that flow circle back on itself. So however, in a sequential system, there would be a single flow of execution, whereas in a concurrent system, there is more than one flow of control, that is more than one thing that can take place at a time. So in a concurrent system, there are multiple simultaneous flow of controls, each rooted at the head of an independent process or a thread. And if we take a snapshot of concurrent systems while it is running, we will logically see multiple loci of execution. So in the UML, we use an active class to represent a process or a thread that is rooted of an independent flow of control and that is concurrent within all peer flow of controls. Now coming to the classes and events, an active classes are just the classes, although ones with a very special property. So an active classes represents an independent flow of control, whereas a plain class embeds no such a flow. So in contrast to active classes, plain classes are implicitly called passive because they cannot independently initiate the control activity. Here we use active classes to model the common families of process or threads. In technical terms, this means that the active object, an instance of an active class, is manifestation of a process or a thread. So by modeling concurrent systems with active objects, we give a name to each independent flow of control. When an active object is created, the association flow of control is started, and when an active object is destroyed, then the association flow of control is terminated. And active classes share the same properties as all other classes. And active classes may have instances, or active classes may have attributes and operations. Active classes may participate in dependency, generalization, and association relationships. And here the active classes may use any of the UML extensibility mechanisms, including stereotyped tagged values and constraints. So here active classes may be a realization of interfaces, and active classes may be realization by collaborations, and the behavior of an active class may be specified by using the state machine. So active classes may participate in all collaborations. So in our diagram, active objects may appear whenever passive objects appear. So we can model the collaboration of active passive objects by using interaction diagrams, and an active object may appear as a target of an event in the state machine. So speaking of state machines, both passive and active objects may send and receive signal events and call events. Coming to the communication. So when objects collaborate with one another, they interact by passing messages from one to another. So in a system with both active and passive objects, there are 4 possible combinations of interactions that we must consider. First, a message may be passed from one passive object to another. Assuming that there is only one flow of control passing through these objects at a time, such an interaction is nothing more than a simple invocation of an operation. And second, a message may be passed from one active object to another. So when that happens, we have inter-process communication, and there are 2 possible styles of communication. First, one active object might synchronously call an operation of another. So that kind of communication has a endogenous semantics, which means that the caller calls the operation and the caller waits for receiver to accept the call. Then the operation is invoked, and a method is chosen for execution based on the operation of the class of the receiver object. So here the method is executed. That is, a return object is passed back to the caller, and then the 2 objects continue on their independent paths. So for the duration of the call, the 2 flow of controls are in lockstep. Second, one active object might asynchronously send a signal or call an operation of an other object. So that kind of communication has mailback semantics, which means that the caller sends the signal or call the operations and then continues on its independent way. So in this mechanism, the receiver accepts the call or call whenever it is ready and continue on its way after it is being done. So this is called mailbox because the two objects are not synchronized. Rather, one object drops off a message from the other. Now, coming to the third one, a message may be passed from an active object to a passive object. And here a potential conflict arises if more than one active object at a time passes its flow of control through one passive object. So here it is the actual conflict if more than one object writes or reads and writes the same attributes. In that situation, we have to model the synchronization of these two flows very carefully as we are going to discuss in our next slides. And fourth, a message may be passed from a passive object to an active one. So at the first glance, this may seem something which is illegal, but if you remember that every flow of control is rooted in some active object. So from this, we will understand that the passive object passing a message to an active object that has the same semantics as active objects passing a message to an active object. Now here in the UML, this figure we render a synchronization message with a solid filled arrowheads and an asynchronous messages as an sticky overhead. That is what we can see this particular picture of communication. Now coming to the synchronization, here visualize for a moment the multiple flow of controls that waves through a concurrent system. So when a flow passes through an operation, we see that at any given moment, the locus of the control is in the operation. So if that operation is defined from the some classes, then we can also say that at a given moment, the locus of the control is in a specific instance of that particular class. So we can have multiple flow of controls in one operation and therefore in one object, and we can have different flow of controls in different operations, but still the result in multiple flow of controls is in the one object. So the problem arises when one flow of control is in one object and at the same time, if we are not careful, then more than one flow might modify the same attributes, correcting the state of the object or losing the information. So this is a classical problem of mutual exclusion. So a failure to deal with the property or which may yield all sorts of race conditions and interfaces that cause a concurrent system to fail in the mysterious and unpredictable ways. Here the key to this problem is serialization of access to a critical object. So there are three approaches, each of which involve attaching certain synchronization properties to the operations defined in a class. So here we can say that in UML we can model all the three approaches. First one is sequential, which is the callers must coordinate outside the object so that only one flow is in the object at a time. So in the presence of multiple flow of controls, the semantics and integrity of the object cannot be guarded. And the second one is guarded. So here the semantics and the integrity of the object are guaranteed in the presence of multiple flow of controls by sequentializing all calls to all of the objects guarded operations. So in effect, exactly one operation at a time can execute on an object, reducing this. So the sequential semantics. So there is a danger of deadlock if care is not taken here. Then coming to the third one, that is concurrent. Here the semantics and the integrity of the object are guaranteed in the presence of multiple flow of controls, because multiple flow of controls access a disjoint sets of data or only read data. So this situation can be arranged by careful design rules. Now, some programming languages support these constructs directly. Java, for example, has the synchronized property which is equivalent to the UML's concurrent property. In every language that support concurrency, we can build support for all these properties by constructing them out of the sum of fours. So as in this figure, which shows we can attach these properties to an operation which we can render in the UML by using the constraint notation. Okay, so note that the concurrency must be associated separately for each operation and for the entire object. Asserting concurrency for an operation means that multiple invocations of that operation can execute concurrently without any danger. So, asserting concurrency for an object means that invocations of different operations can execute concurrency without any danger, and this is more straightened conditions what we see. Now coming to the common modeling techniques, modeling multiple flow of controls. So building a system that encompasses the multiple flow of controls is very, very hard. So not only do we have to decide how best to divide the work across the concurrent active objects, but once we have done that, we also have to decide the right mechanism for communication and synchronization among our system active and passive objects to ensure that they behave properly in the presence of these multiple flows. So for that reason, it helps us to visualize the way these flow interacts with one another, and we can do that in the UML by applying class diagrams and interaction diagrams that contains active classes and objects. So to model multiple flow of controls, we need to identify the opportunities for the concurrent execution and define each flow as an active class. Here generalization or generalize a common set of active objects into an active class, and we need it to be little bit careful not to over engineer our system by introducing the unnecessary concurrencies. So here we need to consider a balanced distribution of responsibility among these active classes that examine the other active and passive classes with each collaboration statistically. Then we need to ensure that each active class is both tightly cohesive and loosely coupled relative to these neighboring classes, and that each has the right set of attribute operations and signals. Then we need to capture these static decisions in a class diagram, explicitly highlighting for each active class. Now, coming to common modeling techniques continuation, we need to consider how each group of classes collaborate with one another dynamically. So to capture those decisions in interaction diagrams, we need to explicitly show the active objects as the root of such flows. So identifying each related sequence by identifying it with the name of the active object, and we need to pay close attention to communicate among these active objects. Then we need to apply synchronization or synchronous and asynchronous messages as appropriate. And then we need to pay close attention to synchronization among these active objects and the passive objects with which they collaborate. We need to apply sequential, guarded or concurrent operation semantics as appropriate. So for example, in this figure, it shows part of the process view of a trading system we will find three objects thus push the information into the systems concurrently. One is a stock ticker, an index watcher, and a CNN news feed, which are named after S, I, and C respectively. So two of these objects, that is S and I, communicate with their own analyst instances A1 and A2. And at least as far as this model goes, the analysis can be designed under the simplifying assumption that only one flow of control will be active in its instance at a time. So here both analyst instances, however, communicate simultaneously with an alter manager, which is being named M here. So here, therefore, M must be designed to perceive its semantics in the presence of multiple flows. So both M and C communicate simultaneously with the T and trade manager. So here each flow is given a sequence number that is distinguished by the flow of control that owns it. And in this diagram, such as this, it's also common to attach the corresponding state machines with orthogonal states showing the detailed behavior of the each object. Now coming to the modeling interprocess communication. So as the part of interprocess multiple flow of control in our system, we also have to consider the mechanism by which these objects that live in a separate flow communicate with each other. So across the threads which live at the same address space, the objects may communicate via signals or call events, the latter of which may exhibit either synchronous or asynchronous semantics. So here across process which lives in a separate address space, we usually have to use different mechanisms. One is the problem of inter-process communication is communicated by the fact that the distinct or the distributed system processes may live on separate nodes. Then we need to classify. So there are two approaches to inter-process communication: message passing and remote procedure calls. In the UML, we still model these two as asynchronous or synchronous events respectively, because these are no longer simple in present in the process calls. We need to adorn our design with further information. So to model the inter-process communication, we need to model the multiple flow of control. So here modeling messages using asynchronous communication model and the remote procedure calls using synchronous communication. And we need to informally specify the underlying mechanism for communication by using nodes, or more formally by using collaborations. So here coming to this figure, which shows a distributed recursive system with processes spread across 4 nodes. Each object is marked using the process stereotype, and each object is marked with a location attribute specifying its physical location. So here communication among the reservation agent, ticket manager, and the hotel agent is asynchronous. And here the communication is described in a note as building on Java Bean message service. So here the communication between the triple planner and the reservation system is synchronous, and the semantics of their interaction is found in the collaboration named Corba ORB. Okay, so here the triple planner which acts as a client and the reservation agent which acts as a server, and by zooming into the collaborations, we will find the details of how these servers and clients collaborate. Thank you all. If you like this video, please subscribe to my channel and press the bell icon for the latest notifications. Thank you one and all for listening with patience.